They thought he bought her out of kindness. But the truth, she was the last living witness to a massacre the whole town tried to bury. And he didn't come to save her. He came to end what should have ended 7 years ago with a bullet and a name. That night inside the Red Moon Saloon, the air was thick with sweat whiskey and the kind of silence that usually comes before a killing. Clara Montgomery, red hair, torn dress, stood trembling on a wooden auction block, barely more than a girl. Each number shouted by the crowd drove her farther from freedom, closer to hell. Snaky Malachi grinned, flashing his gold teeth, thinking he'd just bought himself a prize. And then, a hand rose from the shadows. No one spoke his name. No one invited him. But the moment that hand lifted, everyone felt the shift. His name was Ezra Blackwood, a farmer the town thought had gone mad after losing his wife and daughter. But tonight, he didn't come to mourn. He came to settle a blood oath still burning in his chest. And Clara, she wasn't just a girl on a platform. She was the final piece in a truth buried for 19 years. What happens next is a gunfight, a reckoning, and a revelation that might just shatter everything you thought justice looked like. This is where it begins, in the second before the auctioneer's hammer falls. The floorboards creaked under her bare feet, like even the wood was ashamed of what it had become. Clara Montgomery, 19 years old, stood under the flickering lamplight, hands clutching the frayed edge of her only dress, heart pounding like a war drum. Her hair was a fiery red, her eyes raw not from tears, but from the smoke, the heat, and the stares of men who didn't see a person, only a price tag. The auctioneer barked out another bid. $25. A drunk laughed somewhere near the bar. Clara closed her eyes. In the dark behind her lids, she saw her father, the man who once called her his little bird before the whiskey. The debts and the lies swallowed him whole. She used to dream someone would bid just to save her. But then snaky Malachi stepped into the light, and the dream turned nightmare. Gold teeth flashing, voice slick with filth. $30, he growled, and throw in the saddle. The saloon howled with laughter. Clara didn't flinch, not from fear, but rage. Cold, hard, bone-deep rage. Something inside her cracked like frost splitting old wood. She wanted to scream, to run, but before she could move, it happened. A sound cut the air like a knife coins clinking together. From the farthest corner of the room, a man rose. Dust-covered coat, wide-brim hat, leather bag in one hand. The other hand, missing 2 fingers. "50, he said. His voice was dry like wind blowing over graves. But every syllable hit like thunder. Snaky turned grinning. Well now, farmer wants to play. The man didn't respond. Just stepped forward, pulled out another coin, let it fall with a heavy clink. 75. The room fell silent. Even the auctioneer hesitated. Clara opened her eyes wide. Hope flared. Then fear. What if this man wasn't here to save her, but to claim her for worse? But when the light hit his face, what she saw wasn't lust. It wasn't power. It was grief. Ancient, quiet, real. And it shook her to her core. Snaky's fingers tapped his silver revolver. "You want her?" he said, voice sharp, teeth bared. "Then let's settle it outside, Main Street. No gold, just guns." He thought he still had control. But what he didn't see, what Clara now did, was that this man hadn't come to play anyone's game. He came to end something. Ezra Blackwood didn't speak when he stepped into the light. He didn't need to. The weight he carried wasn't in his voice. It was in the way the room seemed to breathe differently when he moved. Dust hung still in the air, caught in the shaft of oil lamp glow that painted his face in copper and shadow. He looked like something pulled from the grave, stitched back together, with ash and grit and sorrow. No one in Dust Creek had seen him in nearly 3 years. Last they heard, he was digging graves. His own wife, his little girl, after fire swallowed his world whole. Some said he went mad. Some said he never spoke another word. But that night he showed up in the Red Moon Saloon like a ghost with unfinished business. Snaky smirked as he swaggered through the saloon doors, spurs clinking like bones. "You want her that bad, farmer," he called loud enough for the whole town to hear. "Then earn her. Outside, one-on-one. You know the rules." Ezra stood still, just a silhouette in dust and silence. Then without a word he stepped forward. His coat hung heavy. His shoulders, broader than men half his age, moved with the kind of strength that didn't come from the gym, but from the land. From digging. From burying. His boots hit the wood like judgment. 60 seconds, Snaky grinned. "Then we see who walks and who bleeds." Ezra didn't flinch. But Clara saw the tremor in his right hand, the hand that would have to draw, 2 fingers missing, the rest crooked from old wounds. He reached down, resting it gently on a worn leather holster, one so old it looked part of him. Snaky's men moved. The saloon emptied. Word spread like fire on dry wheat. Main Street was about to become an altar. One would rise, one would fall. Ezra stepped through the swinging doors. Sunlight caught his steel-gray eyes, and for the first time, Clara truly saw them. They weren't cold. They weren't dead. They were haunted. And somewhere in them was something still alive. Something human. He walked into the street like a man who had nothing left to lose and one thing left to protect. Clara. The townsfolk gathered, whispered, watched. Snaky paced like a showman, flicking the silver barrel of his Colt. "Last chance to crawl back to your cornfield," he sneered. "Maybe I let you live another season." But Ezra didn't stop, didn't speak, just stared. And then Snaky's grin faltered. You look familiar." Ezra's lips moved, voice no louder than wind through bone. "Fort Apache. 7 years ago. Crimson Ridge Gang." And just like that, the air went still. Snaky's skin turned the color of wet ash. The past had caught up with the devil. The sun hung low, fat and red, like a blood moon bleeding across the rooftops. Main Street was dead quiet, but every window had eyes. Mothers clutched their children. Drunks sobered in seconds. Somewhere a dog whimpered, then fell silent. The whole damn town held its breath. Ezra stood alone in the middle of the dirt road, coat flapping in the dry wind like a funeral flag. His feet planted. His hand hovered inches from the worn leather holster. The missing fingers didn't matter now. What mattered was what still moved in him, muscle memory, battlefield instinct, and a heart that had nothing left to lose. Snaky stepped into the street like a man walking onto a stage, spurs jingling, pearl-handled Colt shining like polished bone. He smiled wide. But behind that smile, something flickered. Not fear, not yet, but the shadow of something close. Recognition. "You're the sergeant," he said, voice lower now. "The one who lived? The one who talked?" Ezra didn't answer. His eyes locked on Snaky like a hawk tracking a dying rabbit. He didn't blink, didn't breathe. A breeze rolled down the street. Dust swirled between them like ghosts of every man Snaky had gunned down. Somewhere a cough, somewhere a whispered prayer. Time stretched thin, "Draw," Ezra said. Snaky's hand twitched, and that was all. The explosion of gunfire shattered the silence like a bone snapping clean. One shot, then two. Clara screamed. Someone ducked. Someone ran. When the dust cleared, Snaky's revolver lay spinning in the dirt, kicked from his hand before it ever cleared the holster. He clutched his wrist, blood pouring between his fingers, eyes wide in disbelief. Ezra stood where he'd begun. Colt still smoking, hand steady, face blank. "Should have drawn fair," he said. Then movement rooftop. Clara's eyes darted up just in time to see Jeremiah Cross raise a rifle. She screamed, but the bullet had already fired. Ezra dropped, rolled, fired back. Cross crumpled, tumbled from the roof like a sack of meat. And just like that, the spell was broken. Snakey's men reached for steel. The town gasped. But before the slaughter could begin, a voice rang out. Enough. Doc Patterson, frail but fierce, stepped into the crosshairs with nothing but a black bag and a backbone. "This man saved my grandson at Fort Apache," he growled. "He's no outlaw. He's the reason any of us are still breathing." And behind him came more. Snaky Malachi knelt in the dust, cradling his shattered wrist. Eyes wide not from pain, but from something colder. Recognition. The kind that crawls up your spine when the past finds you with a gun in your hand and nowhere left to run. "Fort Apache," he whispered, voice cracking like old wood. "You played dead." Ezra didn't answer. He didn't need to. The look in his eyes said it all. 7 years ago, the Crimson Ridge Gang had raided a military outpost under moonlight. 30 men butchered in their sleep. Supply wagons burned. Witnesses erased. All except one. A young sergeant who lay still among corpses, blood in his mouth, his commander's body pressed over him like a shield. He watched Snaky shoot the captain in the back. He watched him laugh. And he remembered. That young sergeant was now the man standing above him, olive-armed and unafraid. "You should have stayed dead," Snaky hissed, sweat slick on his brow. "You think this town will protect you? You think you're some damn hero?" Ezra took one step closer. His voice came low and steady, like a storm on the horizon. "I'm not here to be a hero. I'm here to end something you never paid for." The crowd murmured. Faces turned. Fort Apache was a name spoken in whispers, half forgotten in the dust of old wars and buried reports. But here it was again, rising from the ground with smoke still clinging to its bones. Sheriff Morrison stepped forward, confused and pale. He testified, didn't he? They said one man made it out. Yeah, Doc Patterson said. And he put 3 killers on the noose, but Snaky disappeared before they could hang him. The saloon crowd that once laughed now stood still, staring at a wounded man, exposed and cornered. The outlaw who ruled Dust Creek wasn't just a crook. He was a war criminal in hiding. And justice had finally caught up. Snaky looked to his men. Their eyes had changed. The fear was still there, but now it was pointed at him. He spit in the dirt. "Y'all want to hang your hopes on a broken ghost? Go ahead. But when my brother hears about this, he'll torch this whole damn town." Ezra's voice cut him off like a blade. "Your brother's dead. Hung in Tombstone last month." I watched. It wasn't true. But it didn't matter. It was enough. Enough to shake Snaky's power, enough to wake the town, enough to start something no bullet could stop. For years, Dust Creek had lived under someone else's boots. Law came in the shape of a silver pistol, and order was kept through silence. Folks knew how to survive heads down, lips shut, eyes lowered. They forgot how to stand, how to speak, how to fight. But that silence cracked the moment Snaky's blood hit the dust. It started with Doc Patterson, 73. Bent spine, shaky hands. But he stepped between Ezra and the outlaws like he still had lead in his bones. "He saved my grandson," the old man shouted. "That's more than any of you ever did." Then came Martha Jenkins, the widow who ran the boarding house. She'd buried 2 husbands, both killed in Snaky's crooked games. Her voice didn't shake when she said, "You made us believe we were small. We're not." Young Tommy Wright followed, 16. Dirt on his face, fire in his eyes. You made my mama cry every Sunday, he said to one of Snaky's men. She ain't cried since you stopped collecting. And then Sheriff Morrison, the man who once wore his badge like a noose. He pulled his gun. Slowly, carefully, pointed it not at Ezra, but at Snaky's gang. We've lived scared long enough, he said. I ain't proud of what I've done, but I won't die a coward. Something shifted in the crowd, in the air, like a church bell ringing where no one had prayed in years. Snaky stumbled back, blood soaking his sleeve, wild eyes darting from face to face, looking for fear, looking for the power he used to hold. But it was gone. His men hesitated. Their rifles drooped, their mouths shut. They weren't soldiers, they were shadows. And shadows don't survive in daylight. Ezra didn't speak. He didn't need to. The town was speaking for itself now. Clara watched from behind the saloon doors, her breath caught in her throat. For the first time since she'd been dragged onto that auction block, she wasn't afraid. She wasn't alone. Ezra stepped forward, gun still lowered, voice like thunder rolled through gravel. You're done here, all of you. Ride out now and you live. Stay and the dirt gets deeper. No one moved. And then Snaky laughed, a bitter, cracked sound. You think this ends here? He spat. You think letting me live makes you righteous? Ezra didn't answer, but Clara could see it in his eyes. The war wasn't over. Not yet. Ezra stood over him, gun drawn, arms steady, dust curling in the dying light. Snaky knelt in the dirt, blood dripping from his shattered wrist, mouth twisted into something between a grin and a curse. His voice came low, full of venom and smoke. What now, farmer? You gonna kill me in front of all your new friends? That how your story ends? The crowd watched frozen, hearts hammering. No one dared speak. A single bullet could close the chapter. One squeeze of the trigger could end 3 years of fear, and maybe start 20 more of peace. Ezra's finger tensed. Then a voice behind him, soft, trembling, but clear. Don't. Clara stepped forward, her feet bare, her eyes wet. She looked not at Snaky, but at Ezra, not with fear, not with pity, but with something deeper, something human. You saved me, she whispered, not just from him, but from this, from becoming someone I couldn't look in the eye. She looked down at Snaky, broken and snarling. Don't let him take that from you, too. Ezra's jaw clenched. Memories surged of fire, of screams, of a tiny hand slipping from his fingers in smoke. Of a war that had never truly ended inside him. Snaky chuckled. Ain't that sweet? The girl's got a soft spot for killers. Clara's eyes flared. My father was weak, sold out families to men like you. He paid for that with his life. I won't let this town pay for it with theirs. Ezra looked at her, really looked. The set of her jaw, the fire in her spine, the echo of someone long gone. His wife's strength, his daughter's eyes. He lowered the gun. You've got 1 hour, he said, voice steel wrapped in ash. Take your men, ride out. If I see your face again, mercy dies with you. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Snaky stared up, stunned. But then he smiled. A small, cracked smile full of teeth and secrets. You're a damn fool, he said. And soon you'll be a dead one. He turned toward his horse, dragging his wounded arm. Clara exhaled. But Ezra didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on the outlaw's back. Something in his gut twisted. And in the shadows beyond the schoolhouse, something worse was waiting. The schoolhouse door exploded open. Snaky stood in the frame, bleeding wild-eyed and smiling like the devil just gave him a second chance. In his good hand, a Derringer pistol. Tiny, silver, deadly. His body blocked the entrance. Behind him, inside the dim wooden room, were 8 children huddled against the far wall. Miss Henderson stood in front of them, trembling but tall arms spread like a mother bear made of bone and courage. New Deal farmer Snaky shouted, voice echoing down Main Street. "You follow me, I kill every last one of them. You let me ride out clean. Maybe they live." Gasps tore through the crowd. Ezra spun, already moving. Clara screamed, "The schoolhouse, he's got the kids." The street froze again, but colder this time. Terror gripped the town like a sudden frost. No more heroes. Just children, tiny, fragile, blinking through the barrel of madness. Ezra slowed near the doorway, his hands open, gun holstered. "Let them go, Malachi. You want leverage? Take me." Snaky laughed short and sharp. "You think this is about leverage?" His voice cracked with something deeper, something rotten. "This is about control, about reminding you all who owns this place." He reached into his vest and pulled out something worse than a gun. Dynamite, a short fuse already burning. Ezra's stomach dropped. "No, don't back up." Snaky barked. "I swear to God, Ezra, if I can't own her, I'll bury her. And every brat in this room, too." Then Clara stepped forward. Past the crowd, past Ezra, her voice calm but breaking. "Take me." Snaky blinked. "What? Let them go. Take me instead." Ezra grabbed her arm. "No." She pulled free. "Yes." Her eyes were wet, but her spine was steel. "This started with my father. It should end with me." Snaky considered it, scarred face twitching. He liked the idea, too much. But before he could answer, a voice piped up from the back of the schoolhouse, small, innocent, unshaken. "Mister, you're hurt real bad," said a little girl. "Sarah Wright, no more than 7. My mama says sometimes hurt people do mean things 'cause they're scared." The silence was suffocating. Snaky looked at her, just for a second. And in that impossible breath, something in him cracked. Ezra saw it and moved. The fuse hissed. It was the kind of sound that didn't belong in a schoolhouse, soft, short, and final. Ezra's eyes locked on the dynamite pressed to Snaky's chest. The outlaw clutched it like it was holy. His lips trembled, not with fear, but with sick joy. "If I can't have her," he rasped, "nobody can." Ezra didn't think. He moved. Clara moved with him. Together they crashed into Snaky's body, driving him back into the corner where the schoolhouse wall turned to stone. Ezra twisted, throwing himself between Clara and the blast. Snaky screamed, arms flailing. Children cried out. Miss Henderson shielded them with everything she had. And then the world erupted. The blast hit like thunder in a canyon, roaring, choking, splintering wood, shattering windows 2 streets over. Smoke billowed into the sky, swallowing the roof in flame and dust. A corner of the schoolhouse collapsed. Screams and silence bled into one another. Then nothing. Just the ringing. Just dust. Just debris. Then movement. A cough, a cry. And Clara crawling from the wreckage, coughing, cut but alive. She looked around in horror, blood in her hair, smoke in her lungs. "Ezra," she cried, tearing through the broken wood and stone. She found him under a beam, his coat scorched, face bloodied but breathing. Barely. He'd taken the worst of it. Protected her. Again. She grabbed his shirt, her fingers shaking. That's when she felt it, a piece of paper. Old, faded, stuffed inside his coat pocket. She pulled it free. It was a photograph. A woman, auburn hair, gentle eyes just like Clara's. She turned it over. In smeared ink barely legible, "My beloved daughter Emma, may you find the happiness I could never give you." "Papa?" Her world tilted. Her heart stopped. Clara wasn't Clara. She was Emma Blackwood, Ezra's daughter. The one they told her died in the epidemic. The one he gave away to protect. The one he'd watched from afar for 19 silent years. Doc Patterson arrived already tearing open his bag. "You found it, didn't you?" he said softly. "I always wondered if you would." Clara's hands trembled. Her voice cracked. "You knew?" The old doctor nodded. "I delivered you. Your name was Emma long before you were Clara." Ezra stirred. His eyes opened. They found hers, and tears cut lines through the blood on his face. "Emma," he whispered, and for the first time since the fire that ruined them both, the silence broke. She didn't cry. Not at first. Clara knew Emma sat beside Ezra in the rubble, holding his head in her lap like something precious. The schoolhouse still smoldered behind them. Shouts and boots thudded around her. But she heard none of it. Only his breath, and her own heartbeat breaking. Ezra looked older than the dirt beneath them. Skin gray with smoke, cuts painting his cheek like war paint. But his eyes were soft now, like the fire had finally burned everything but the truth away. "I thought you were dead," she whispered. "I was," he rasped, "for a while." She pressed the photo to his chest. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice cracked. "Because I was broken. After your mother, after the war. I thought you'd be safer far from me. Safer not knowing." Emma stared at the photo again. The woman with auburn hair, the same hair now tangled in her own sweat and soot. "But you watched me." He nodded. "Barely. Every year. Your first day of school, your 16th birthday, the night you ran from that man." His throat caught. "I never stopped loving you, just stopped believing I deserved to." Emma leaned closer, forehead against his. "You're wrong." His eyes closed. But a tear slipped free, and it wasn't from pain. Behind them the town stirred. Children were pulled from the ruins. Miss Henderson still held Sarah Wright in her arms. Sheriff Morrison stood tall, his badge catching firelight like redemption. Snakey's body lay beneath the rubble, what was left of it. No more threats, no more terror, just dust and blood and the sound of breathing survivors. Doc Patterson crouched beside them. "He's hurt, but he'll make it if he's got a reason to." Emma wiped her face. Smeared blood, ash, and something new. Resolve. She looked at the town, then at the man who'd saved her, not once but always. "My name's Clara Montgomery," she said quietly. "That girl died in that saloon the moment you raised your hand." She looked back at him. "But maybe Emma Blackwood can live again." Ezra opened his eyes, and for the first time in 19 years. He smiled. The morning after smelled like ash sweat and something strange to Dust Creek. Hope. Smoke still curled from the remains of the schoolhouse, but the fire had passed. The fear was gone with it. For the first time in years, the town stood still. Not because it was afraid to move, but because it was learning how to stand tall again. Ezra Blackwood sat on the edge of a bench outside the sheriff's office. Bandages wrapped his ribs. Dirt clung to his boots. But there was light in his eyes. Faint. Unfamiliar. But real. Beside him stood Emma. No longer Clara. Her dress was torn, hair wild, but her spine straight as a rail. The whole town had seen it, the girl who offered herself to save children that weren't hers. The man who once buried a family and now chose to protect one. Sheriff Morrison approached. Hat in hand, voice low. "Territorial Marshal wants to speak with you. Said there's a bounty for Crimson Ridge. and the man who finally ended Snaky's reign. Ezra shook his head. I didn't do it for the bounty. The sheriff nodded. We know. Behind them, townsfolk worked, hammering, rebuilding, laughing. Children ran through the square. No one flinched at the sound of footsteps anymore. Miss Henderson opened a fresh book beside a makeshift chalkboard. Sarah Wright sat up front. Doc Patterson was teaching boys how to hammer wood straight. And Martha Jenkins was already writing letters to bring in a proper school teacher from the east. Dust Creek had buried its past in the rubble, and something new was rising in its place. Emma looked at Ezra. What now? He didn't answer right away, just stared at the horizon. There's land out west, he said finally. Fertile, quiet, far from ghosts. She smiled. Sounds lonely. Only if I go alone. They stood side by side, watching a town breathe again. A father, a daughter. Not running anymore, just walking forward, towards something neither of them could name yet. But they'd build it, together. And the town that once forgot how to fight. It remembered. Now let me ask you something. If you were Ezra wounded, hunted by memories staring at the man who ruined everything, would you have pulled the trigger, or would you have chosen mercy, knowing it could cost you everything? Tell me below. Because in the West, every choice carves its mark into the land. And sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we choose not to fight.